Hi, I'm in J.C. Ryle's book Holiness in the chapter on sin. It says, concerning the guilt, vileness, and offensiveness of sin in the sight of God, my words shall be few. I say few advisedly. I do not think in the nature of things that mortal man can at all realize the exceeding sinfulness of sin in the sight of the holy and perfect one with whom we have to do. On the one hand, God is that eternal being who charges his angels with folly, and in whose sight the very heavens are not clean. He is one who reads thoughts and motives as well as actions and requires truth in the inward parts. He references Job chapter 4 here, so I'll talk a little more about that at the end. We, on the other hand, poor blind creatures, here today and gone tomorrow, born in sin, surrounded by sinners, living in a constant atmosphere of weakness, infirmity, and imperfection, can form none but the most inadequate conceptions of the hideousness of evil. We have no line to fathom it, and no measure by which to gauge it. The blind men can see no difference between a masterpiece of Titian or Raphael and the Queen's head on a village signboard. The deaf man cannot distinguish between a penny whistle and a cathedral organ. The very animals whose smell is most offensive to us have no idea that they are offensive, and are not offensive to one another. And man, fallen man, I believe, can have no just idea what a vile thing sin is in the sight of that God, whose handiwork is absolutely perfect. Perfect whether we look through a microscope or a telescope. Perfect in the formation of a mighty planet like Jupiter with his satellites, keeping time to a second as he rolls around the sun. Perfect in the formation of the smallest insect that crawls over a foot of ground. But let us nevertheless settle it firmly in our minds that sin is the abominable thing that God hateth, and that God is of purer eyes than to behold iniquity, and cannot look upon that which is evil. That the least transgression of God's law makes us guilty of all, and that the soul that sinneth shall die, and that the wages of sin is death, that God shall judge the secrets of men, that there is a worm that never dies, and a fire that is not quenched, and that the wicked shall be turned into hell, and shall not go away into everlasting, and shall go away into everlasting punishment, and that nothing that defiles shall in any wise enter heaven. These are indeed tremendous words which we consider, and they are written in the book of a most merciful God. No proof of the fullness of sin, after all, is so overwhelming and unanswerable as the cross and passion of our Lord Jesus Christ, and the whole doctrine of his substitution and atonement. Terribly black must the guilt be, for which nothing but the blood of the Son of God could make satisfaction. Heavy must the weight of human sin be, which made Jesus groan and sweat drops of blood in agony at Gethsemane, and cry at Golgotha, my God, why hast thou forsaken me? Nothing, I am convinced, will astonish us so much when we awake in the resurrection day as the view we shall have of sin, and the retrospect we shall take of our own countless shortcomings and defects. Never till the hour when Christ comes the second time shall we fully realize the sinfulness of sin. Well might George Whitefield say, the anthem in heaven will be, what hath God wrought? So going back to his quote from Job in particular, I found I wanted to comment on this because I did a whole series on Job. And when we're reading the Bible, we have to watch who's talking, who's speaking. Because in the case of Job, sometimes it's Job talking, sometimes it's his companions talking, and sometimes it's his wife talking, or God himself talking. So we have to watch the parts we quote and make sure we're getting God's point of view or what God says, and not pulling out something that might be true but not noting who's saying it. It might also not be true, because at the end of Job, when God speaks, he says his companions did not speak the truth about God. And so the ones he quotes here are about that. So I have linked at the end of this video a video on Job. Job's 8 voices, the 8 voices. Who is right? Implications for inspiration. So I'll put that in the link. I'll also put a link in to a video I was doing about the incarnation, because that, I think, is the indicator of how sinful sin is, what God had to do to remedy our situation, our plight.